What's up, guys? Thomas Mott alongside Josh Davis, who is coming back from a cruise right now. We are live, and you see what is happening behind us. That is Jason Kelce. It's a live look at Jason Kelce, who is reading his retirement speech from the National Football League. It is happening right now. We learned a couple of hours ago he was going to speak to the media at a press conference. It normally isn't a very good sign. Josh, here we go. It's official. 62 is hanging it up right now.
It is. Yeah, it's crazy. And as these things happen, of course, right after we're getting off of the cruise, going on vacation, but it needed to happen fairly soon, obviously, for a lot of reasons. And, Kelsey thinking about it, it's not really a surprise. I don't think that many people out there, and shout out to everyone in the chat, but it's not the biggest surprise for him to say this because, to your point, I mean, even reading between the lines of the press conference, but also we go back to Adam Schefter breaking it as soon as the Bucks beat us in the playoff game and all that. But it's extra emotional because it's official. It actually happened. So it's hey, kudos to the legend, the GOAT. There will never be another Jason Kelce. That's a fact. But it's not like it's going to be terrible. I've seen people saying, "Oh my gosh, what do we do at center? What are we going to do for the offensive line?" Now the leadership part is huge. That's going to be the biggest loss, I think, in my opinion. But when it comes to center, are you super worried? Because the first question I got as soon as this started coming is hey, what are we gonna do? Who's our center? Who do we draft? Who do we sign? Who's the guy? What's your answer to that? I think we're on the same page, but what's your answer to that one?
I shrugged it off. Offensive line, never in a million years did I think I'd play that position. Paul was different. As opposed to working guys into the ground, his motto was work smarter, not harder. His main goal was to improve us as athletes and make us stronger, faster, more explosive. He didn't care about anything else. Once during a conditioning drill, I saw a teammate struggling to keep up during a run, so I slowed down to encourage him. And he yelled at me. He said, "You run this exercise the best you can. Lead from the front. It's my job to take care of the back." Paul moved me to offensive line that spring. And it ended up being the single greatest move that ever happened to me as a football player. There are too many people to thank for my times at Cincinnati, so I'd like to limit it to coaches Paul Longo, Jeff Quinn, Brian Kelly, Mark D'Antonio, strength coaches Tim Swanger, Dave Andrews, Coach Kerry Combs, Coach Butch Jones.
Oh, I noticed I was muted there for a while. Sorry, people are talking about muted there. No, I was saying they're going to be just fine. Obviously, they have Cam Jurgens, who's going to be the center. He's going to be the focal piece of this offensive line that still has a ton of Pro Bowlers not named Jason Kelce on this list. I mean, you talk about Mylott at left tackle, Lane Johnson at right tackle, Lana Dickerson at left guard, and then you slide over Cam Jurgens. Everything is going to be just fine in terms of what Philadelphia is going to do from an offensive line perspective, but it's just crazy thinking about Kelce's longevity in the NFL. There's so many great things about Jason Kelce, Josh. One of the big things for me is, I mean, the dude was almost never injured. I mean, he almost never missed games. He has the consecutive, game streak still going technically until today for Philadelphia. Just an incredible job by a guy who is the ultimate pro, and really, I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest Eagles of all time.
Yeah, I think without question, that's not not really up for debate. You look at the polls that people do, obviously, during the offseason, you got to kill time with some stuff. So we've seen, hey, who's your favorite Eagle, greatest Eagle of all time? And there's some recency bias, so sure, Kelce gets up there even higher normally. But you're right. It's just there's not another Jason Kelce. The fact that he played with, the MCL sprain, the torn elbow, and a severe ankle injury that he was dealing with all in the same season, and just to continue playing along. I mean, that's why he has the consecutive game streak. But it was when we went to the Dolphins game. I remember it's hey, what jersey should we be getting? Everything. I'm talking to my wife. I'm it feels like we got to get a Kelce one because it's the Kelly Green. It could be Kelce's last season. Turns out it will be his last season. I know a lot of people that said the same thing. It's hey, I got to go to get a Kelce jersey. I'm sure that the purchases are going to fly through the roof, obviously, for this announcement. People getting their hands on that. But when you think about not only, like you say, what he's done for this team and the consecutive streak, but just what he's meant to the city. The Ocean Drive fundraisers and the Eagles autism events and just everything that he embodies. It's like, I don't know, you can't help but have a smile on your face when you talk about Jason Kelce, regardless of what that is, whether it's the NFL, whether it's him at a Buffalo Bills game, like wherever he is just iconic. And so, I mean, there's no doubt he's going to be successful, but it's emotional. And seeing him just break down in the press conference, it's like, I don't know. It's gonna feel weird, and maybe it'll be like feeling even stranger once we get to the regular season. It's like, oh wow, he's officially not on the team. But
Yeah.
you're right. It's gonna be a big hole. I think more so morale wise, and just having the personality or the character in that locker room than even as great as he is on the field. But it's just gonna be so much more just that character in the locker room.
It's just incredible, again, that Philadelphia had a plan in place. I think it's super important for people to understand that they had a plan in place basically from the very beginning. When Kelce came to them and said, hey, I'm getting close to retiring, he went on and founded themselves a center in Cam Jurgens, and Jurgens is going to roll in there. Do you think they still go offensive line early in this draft? That's going to be a discussion for later on, this month and into April. But do you still think that they're going to try to get someone young but higher up in the draft in the second or third or fourth round for Jeff Stoutland to go ahead and mold? Or do you think Tyler Steen was kind of that guy whenever they took him last year?
I mean, yeah, we talked about it a number of times, and like you said, we will continue to. I'll be a little bit upset if we go O-line at number one. If first round is offensive lineman, um, it's just we have so many holes on the defense, and like we've been talking about. I mean, after the Bucks game, everyone knew that Jason Kelce was going to retire. Like he was
Yeah.
95% sure, right? Like there's not a huge thought of, hey, he might be coming back, or let's hold out now. No, I was still holding out hope. Everyone was holding out hope, but realistically, we knew that wasn't going to happen, or really much chance of it happening. But I think that like we've talked about, we saw this team and the lack of the pieces that it has. And to your point, I mean, Cam Jurgens is the guy. Like I have full confidence in Cam Jurgens. I really do. I'm not saying he's going to be Jason Kelce. He's not going to be an All-Pro next year. He could be, but I'm not going to say that. But I do think that he's going to be very serviceable. The tush push is still going to be very effective. People that say, hey, it's going to go to league average. No, it's not. It is a technique thing that Jason Kelce has coached up. There's footage out there, obviously, and we know from him talking about in the draft, Beef Jerky is who he selected as his replacement. He said, if I could pick one guy, that is the guy to be for the Eagles. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to be fine. And because of that, I would say, please don't pick an offensive lineman in the first round. Like, I really want someone that can contribute from day one. And maybe they could if you took an O lineman, but there's just so many holes on that defense. I'm like, if you get an opportunity, whether it's someone of a corner would be great. That's my number one priority, I think, depending on who's available there. But Quinyon Mitchell is continuing so far to be my number one. But there's lots of other options there, especially with the defense. And like we talked about, with you got your guy in Vic Fangio, so make sure he has the pieces to be successful. That's where I would go with. But again, you can make the counter argument. I mean, with Jeff Stoutland, you got Lane Johnson in a couple years coming up. If a guy falls to you, a J.C. Latham from Alabama or someone like that, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't be surprising at all if the Eagles say, well, let's go get our guy.
You do wonder how long Jason's been thinking about this decision. I mean, obviously dating back to whenever the Eagles lost the Super Bowl, we thought he was going to go ahead and retire. He comes back. He plays this year. Philadelphia seemingly is back where they're supposed to be at 10-1. They had the epic collapse. You wonder what the biggest factor was. Is it the age? Is it the family? Is it having to go through another training camp? We'll probably never know. I think overall, though, the leadership aspect of it is the biggest loss for Philadelphia. The on the play is obvious, right? But the leadership factor is going to be very interesting because you're also probably losing Fletcher Cox. New reports coming out on that. I'll talk about that a little bit later on this afternoon on my show. You're going to lose two of your, if not the biggest two leaders in this entire locker room from an offensive perspective and a defensive perspective. And while Philadelphia still has some, older guys on this roster, Darius Slay, obviously A.J. Brown is somewhat of a veteran in the National Football League. I think you're going to be looking towards Jalen Hurts to really take a massive leadership leap this offseason with Kelce no longer being there from an offensive perspective. You never really want your tight end, your wide receiver to be the big vocal voice and leader inside the locker room. You want to be your quarterback, or in very rare cases, a guy like Jason Kelce. With Kelce gone, leadership is going to be a very interesting thing that Philadelphia has to kind of pivot to and find out who they want to, follow going into the 2024 season, which is going to be a critical season for a lot of people. Nick Sirianni, who almost didn't come back this season, obviously the coordinators who are now in the building, but Jalen Hurts himself, who's on this massive contract and yet coming off of somewhat of a disappointing second half of the 2023 season. Kelce's leadership for me is going to be really, really interesting to see exactly how they replace that going forward.
Yeah, it's a changing of the guards. And to your point, with Fletch on the defense and Kelce on the offensive side, you're going to have guys step up. And I will say, I mean, I'm not really. I know that some people are concerned. I'm not super concerned about Jalen Hurts and his leadership. I think that he will rise to the occasion. I mean, the number of times that people have doubted him, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden he comes back to prove you wrong. Whether or not he's a, hey, you know what, he's a more of a quiet strength, lead by example. That's fine, but he can be a little bit more vocal, and he has at times. So you don't have as much complaints whenever we're winning and we make the Super Bowl, but then whenever it's a season that it falls off a cliff, sure, naturally you're going to criticize and complain about a lot of things. Now, is there room for growth? Sure, always. Like, that's every single facet of the game and the team and everything. But I don't think that there's a drastic concern there. But to your point, like, it is going to be fascinating to see who rises to the occasion. And I'd say more so on the defensive side, because like I said, I'm confident in Jalen being able to get up to that level. But do you think, I guess I'm curious, do you think that there is someone on the roster right now? And I know that there's a couple that, we could throw out there as potentials, or who Howie would most likely want that to be. But who is going to be that vocal presence in the locker room on the defensive side? Or are they not on the roster?
I mean, you'd like to hope that they were on the roster right now. I think Brandon Graham potentially coming back for a final farewell tour. He could be a leader on that defense. I think big play Slay. Listen, Slay has gotten a lot of hate over the past calendar year, both his play on the football field, but also, all the stuff he said off the football field. Recently talking about the Eagle fan base, but he is still probably the only, as you look at it, aged veteran star or former star currently on the Eagles defensive side of the football. And so maybe I agree with you in terms of Jalen Hurts, but you're looking at Darius Slay potentially being a leader unless they go out and get somebody, Justin Simmons or Patrick Surtain or, some of these other free agent targets we'll talk about in the days and weeks to come. Going back to Kelce, though, it is going to be very, very, very fun to watch him get his Hall of Fame jacket. His brother will put it on his back 5 years from now. He's going to go ahead and be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you look through his list of accomplishments, besides 7 Pro Bowls and all the All-Pros, and obviously Super Bowl championship in 2017 really cemented his legacy. He's going to go down as one of the greatest centers of all time. But when you go through the hierarchy of Eagle players as a whole, there are some flashy names. You got Reggie White, talking about Donovan McNabb. But Jason Kelce, Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelce, he's probably the most all-around beloved. There isn't an Eagle fan out there that I think has ever said anything negative about Jason Kelce, minus 1 or 2, errant snaps in his entire career. It's going to be very, very fun 5 years from now to watch him go into the Hall of Fame, and very fun to see what he does in his post-football career. You like to assume that some of these broadcast companies, NBC, maybe NFL Network, ESPN, and Amazon Prime, they're going to be giving him a big-time call, probably already have, to potentially hire him to be, in a booth or in a network television studio. But he has the New Heights podcast and plenty of other things going for him, including a very beautiful and strong family.
Yep, he's got everything in front of him, and even on the Shaq podcast that he had, that was kind of cool moment from Shaq sharing with him, like, hey, look, when it's time, like, don't drag it on. Make sure family is most important. So he's very blessed. He knows that it's the right time. It's, wish him the best. It is sad to see for the organization, but to your point, like, he could basically pick and choose what he wants to do. Like, he's been interviewing, or I guess kind of preparing for a potential for broadcasting. Like you said, any broadcast network really that he would prefer to go to, he could just about name it, I think. And he's gone to the broadcasting school. You end up looking at, I mean, even in the Amazon documentary, he's kind of talking about the potentials there. So it'll be, fascinating to see where he ends up, what he ends up doing. The New Heights podcast will be great. It'll be interesting too, just the different flair, I guess, of him not actually playing. Travis will be playing still, I assume, unless, something crazy happens and he follows us up and says, hey, I'm gone too. But, Travis will probably be playing. So it'll be one playing and one observing. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. I'm curious, put you on the spot a little bit too, and I'll maybe go first so you can buy some time. But favorite Kelce memory? I know there's a million of them, so maybe that's too difficult. But maybe top 5 or just one first one that comes to mind. I think for me, and this is very easy maybe, so we might have the same. But I think just the raw emotion of the Super Bowl speech is fantastic. But I would say before that, in the locker room, and the tears and the emotion, just to see what it meant to him, you can tell for sure. The Super Bowl speech is great with all the obscenities and everything. It's unbelievable, But it's like before, in the locker room, after that happened, it's like the culmination of all the hard work, all the injuries he played through, the consecutive game streak, everything to reach the mountaintop, and saying he did it with this group of men. I think for me, that's just it's hard not to get teary-eyed seeing something like that. So I would say probably post game. locker room, quieter moment, kind of a reflection of him. That may be the top moment of seeing Jason Kelce.
I think it's great. I really like his pre-Super Bowl speech before the Super Bowl last season, or 2 seasons ago now. I mean, that was so emotional, so heartfelt, and you just, broke for him to lose that game. It really felt like they, obviously had it, 10-point lead at halftime, and it just slowly slipped away in the end. But his pre-game or pre-Super Bowl speech in the team hotel, I think Saturday night before the Super Bowl in Arizona, is probably one of the best speeches that I've heard for a very, very long time. This one is going to go down as well. I mean, you're looking at a very emotional Jason Kelce, and he always wears emotions on the sleeve, but obviously, crying for what has been an extended period of time, watching this behind us here, this is going to go down as one of the great Eagle retirement press conferences. This one's up there with, I think, Peyton Manning's retirement press conference out of Denver was very emotional as well.
Yeah, you're right. That was definitely. Again, it's almost like those you can kind of see it's the writing's on the wall, or it's going to eventually get there. But it's like you were alluding to earlier. It's not only what he did on the field, but it's the off the field, the total ramifications for the franchise, the organization. One of the most beloved, if the most beloved, And again, it's so recent and fresh in our memories there. But it you can't help it, and you go through. If you're on Twitter, you've seen the number of tweets and endless conversations about this hurts. Like, this is very emotional. Even though we basically knew it was coming, it was headed in that direction. So, yeah, it's going to be a very new look. We already expected it to be that way with some turnover and some coaching staff changes and everything else for the Eagles. But you're going to have new guys that have to step up. Granted, you had other captains than just Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox and kind of some of the older vets. But it's not only you're going to have the captains, but you're going to have those established leaders be changing. And it's kind of a question, okay, who does that become? And how effective can they get that locker room to be? So lots of questions to be had there, but I think ultimately, I don't know, it may take a couple days to fully reflect on this actually happening. Even again, as I said, we expected it to take place anyway. But, it's kudos to Jason Kelce. He knows what he's doing, too. He wasn't going to drag this thing on. For anybody that was saying, hey, he may just take forever to make sure he absolutely wants to. He knows with free agency coming up, if he had the final answer, I'm going to give it to him before free agency. He wants to help the organization. So, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he ends up coming back and coaching. I know he's thrown that out there as a possibility. So maybe we see him pretty soon.
Obviously, this does help Philadelphia cap space-wise. I know all of us would have gladly given Kelce $13-14 million for one final season, but it does allow Philadelphia, what is now $44 million in cap space following the Kevin Byard release a couple of days ago, to go out into free agency and make some serious moves. I know a lot of people are saying that, this marks the end of Philadelphia's little mini dynasty, or not even dynasty, but a little mini run they've had the past couple of years. We mentioned at the top, we'll wrap it up with this, but Cam Jurgens is a very capable center. He's one of the best young centers in the National Football League. We're supposed to be coming out of the draft. It got delayed because Kelce wanted to play one more year and try and win a ring this past season. But Cam Jurgens has been training and studying under Jason Kelce for 2 seasons now, like literally 2 seasons, playing alongside him for one at right guard this past year. He's ready to slide over as your starting center. Would you be shocked if Philadelphia takes a center later on in the draft just to kind of have a little contingency plan? Heaven forbid an injury were to happen. I wouldn't be. But overall, Kelce leaving is not the end of the world for a Philadelphia Eagles team that is still absolutely loaded with talent and should be able to, with the right offseason moves, still compete for an NFC East division crown and hopefully still be, more like the 10-1 football team we saw the first 11 weeks of the season and less like that 1-6 team, whatever it was, the final couple games of the year. The worst part, though, is the fact that you went home against the Bucs in Kelce's final game in pretty sad fashion.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If you, that's probably about as far away, if you believe in NFL script writing, or you had believed in it, then you can just throw that out the window, because that's about as far away as an NFL script writing as you would want for a legend like Jason Kelce and what he's meant for the NFL, to send him out that way. So yeah, it couldn't have been, couldn't have been much worse. There's a lot of other better storybook endings that I could come up with. Granted, we may be biased a little bit, but still, for the legend that he is. But no, I think to your point too, also about the drafting a center, I don't think it's impossible. I think you might be able to, you might see that with just the offensive line and how they value it. Jackson Powers Johnson potential, he could play right guard too if you don't totally believe in Steen or if the value's there. But yeah, it's going to be somewhat different. I would expect it'll for sure in my mind be Cam Jurgens, because he's not really a right guard. He was fine, he was okay, but he's a center, and he's going to be, I think, a good center, a really good center. And we'll see, how he can fill in the gap there with Kelce gone and what that looks like. But it's going to definitely be different.
All right, well, the day has come. I mean, we kind of expected this to happen at least this week, next week. The new league year starts 2 weeks from today, and so we were thinking it was going to be announced. He comes out today. He's finishing up his press conference right now. Jason Kelce officially retiring from the National Football League. Josh heading back from his vacation. I got back from mine yesterday. We'll have a Wednesday Link Live coming up in a couple of days and plenty of breakdowns as well as the free agency period's about to start. It's going to get crazy for Philadelphia. Be sure to go ahead and get ready for that. We go ahead and sign off. Jason Kelce, he signs off for one last time as a Philadelphia Eagle and for, of course, a future Hall of Fame career. We love 62, and we can't wait to see what the future has for him, but sad day in Philadelphia as your greatest center, one of your greatest players of all time, hangs it up. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. We wrap things up. We'll see you guys in the next one.